Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له الملك الحق المبين وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله سيد ولد آدم أجمعين صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين على مر الأيام والليالي والشهور والسنين أما بعد. As we continue 7:13 p.m. excuse me, Wednesday, August the 24th, 2022, where it agrees with the Tariq al-Hijri, the Islamic calendar, or the Islamic date rather, the 26th of Muharram, on this evening, on this Masa al-Yawm al-Ithnain or Masa al-Ithnain, on this Monday evening, inshallah. We ask Allah to make this liqa mubarak, make this meeting of ours, this gathering of ours blessed, wa khalis al-wajh. As we continue in the explanation of Fataawa al-Hamawiyyah al-Kubra, the great Imam Abu al-Abbas Taqi Ahmad ibn Abd al-Halim ibn Abd al-Salam ibn Taymiyyah al-Harrani al-Dimashqi al-Numayri, who died 728, 728 after the hijrah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. As we continue the explanation, as is mentioned, فَأَمَّا الَّذِي جَحَدَ مَا وَصَفَ الرَّبِّ بِنَفْسِهِ تَعَمُّقًا. As we were explaining the statement of the great Imam Ibn al-Majishun, his name was Abdul Aziz ibn Abdullah ibn Abi Salama ibn al-Majishun, who's from the Aqran, or the contemporaries of the great Imam Malik in Al-Madinah, in the exact same area, in the exact same blessed city of the Prophet ﷺ, of those great scholars of knowledge in that city. Al-Nabawiyah, Al-Madinah al-Nabawiyah, the prophetic city of our Prophet ﷺ, who Allah blessed from those scholars to be in that statement, was the great Imam Malik, and from his contemporaries and from those who were from them teaching in the Masjid, meaning in the Masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, was the great Imam Ibn al-Majishun. Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah brought this tremendous statement that we will continue as he mentions. He says, as for, let's continue, فَأَمَّا الَّذِي جَحَدْ مَا وَصَفَ الرَّبُّ مِنْ نَفْسِهِ تَعَمُّقًا وَتَكْلِفًا فَقَدْ اسْتَهْوَتُ الشَّيَاطِينَ فِي الْأَرْضِ حَيْرَانٍ فصار يستدل بزعمه على جحد ما وصف الرب وسمى من نفسه بإنقاذ لا بد إن كان له كذا من أن يكون له كذا. We already explained this. I think this is where we stopped at actually. You'll find that in the statement of Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah rahimahullah, as he says, فصار يستدل بزعمه على جحد ما وصف الرب. We already explained this, but we'll mention it quickly so everyone could be abreast of where we stopped. Have everyone caught up on what we mentioned. So we said last class, for example, we talked about the words, the philosophical terms that were introduced and that caused confusion amongst the Muslims. And from those statements is, for example, al-jism or al-'ard or al-ib'ad or jihad or makan. We talked about that. We talked about, for example, these words such as body. Like, for example, if Allah is above the heavens, it necessitates that He's a body. That's the reason why we say that Allah is not above. We talked about this last class. We explained it in a little detail that we said initially these words are not to be used. For example, the word tanaqqul or the word Allah moves, all those affairs, Allah did not mention that in His book nor in the authentic Sunnah. So the affair in its origin, we're supposed to cling to what Allah mentioned in the book of Allah, or in His book, and in the authentic Sunnah. And that's it. Those of the statements and the words concerning our Lord, we mentioned and we stick to. We said what happened is that the philosophers started introducing these words, and the Muslim adopted them and translated them from Greek philosophy into Arabic, and they Arabized it. which as a result of it, the Muslims started adopting these words, and as we mentioned, it started to cause confusion. And it started to cast doubt on the hearts of the Muslims concerning their Lord. And the affirmance of what? Or the affirmation of those names and attributes started to become doubtable. Because they, for example, said, if Allah is above, then necessitates He sits. So that's what you'll find Ibn Majishul mentions here. What it says. He said, for example, if you look in your book, بِإِنْ قَالَ بُدْ إِنْ كَانَ لَهُ كَذَا مِنْ أَنْ يَكُونَ لَهُ كَذَا. If he has this, then it necessitates this. Or this should be this. So you find that's what he's saying. So we mentioned it said, all these words in this origin are not to be used. You'll find from the Salaf who did fall into using these words. So you'll find, for example, in certain books, such as the great Imam Uthman bin Sa'id al-Dari, and his naqd, or his criticism of the great innovator Bishr al-Risi. You'll find in his book that he used these words. And you find that if you was to go through the book, and for what I know, from what I remember or recall, I think that Shaykh Ali Wasifi was actually teaching the book with the brothers in Maktab to Muwahideen. But anyway, you'll find that from those, the great Imam Muhammad Ahmad Jami, he said, you'll find from the Imam of the past that did fall into these little errors of using these words when they were combating the people falsehood. See how they even called, and I have it on don't disturb, and it still got through. So these words that were used, you'll find that some of the Salaf, even though they were upon the truth, they were from the people of Sunnah, they still fell into those little mistakes and those slip-ups in those areas. Because I know certain people say, well, this scholar in the past used that, he used the word, what was the problem? You'll find that the great Imam Muhammad Ahmadi still said it was incorrect for them to use those words. The only time the word shouldn't be used at all. The word body, the word place, because they were words that cause confusion, and they also carry what? True and false meanings at the same time. They carry haqq and batil. And we know that the statements that the people of Sunnah use are statements that always aid what? The truth. It can never be taken this way or this way. We always use statements that aid towards what pleases Allah, and those statements that aid the truth, always. We don't come with statements that it can be used or you utilize if you want to go to somebody else, meaning the people falsehood, you can use the statement with them because you intended this. And then if you want to go back to the people of the Sunnah and say, well, they use the same statement, but you're intending what? Something else. So that's the reason why you'll find that those words in this origin should not be used. They shouldn't be used at all. But anyway, let's get back to the book. He says, for you'll find that they say that it necessitates this. If Allah has this, then it necessitates this. Right? So if Allah descends, then it, for example, then it necessitates He moves. As we said, the word intiqal is from those words again. The word move is from those words that should not be used in regards to Allah. So if a person came to you and say, you believe Allah moves, we would say, we don't use those words, number one. In regards to what comes in the Kitab and Sunnah, those words were never used. Allah didn't mention in His book, nor did He mention the authentic Sunnah of intiqam. You understand, everyone? So those affairs should not be mentioned. What the Salaf remains silent from, we should not indulge in at all. Did you find any of the Sahaba say that? No. So we stick to those affairs, to those words, with our molded teeth of what comes in the Book of Allah and in the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah in regards to Allah and the affirmation of His name and attributes, without using philosophical terms that were newly introduced later, which as a result of it caused what? Confusion and doubt concerning the most vital and important of all affairs, which is the people's belief concerning their Lord. Those affairs, which is instilled in the doubt, is the most connecting audio. Shaitan of us. Hold on. It went off. No, not the speaker, it went off from Mixer. Excuse me, everyone. I have to reset it.
That's the first one you got home. You're like, oh, I missed it.
That's why we're trying to accommodate, so we started again. Sorry about that, everyone. next one is easy to set up than the other one, because already has the title in there already. Okay. Alhamdulillah. So we continue. I'm sorry, everyone. Just the system locked out for some unknown reason or unforeseen reasons. Anyway, so we were saying that Allah Ta'ala, these words should not be used at all as it pertains to Allah. Why? Because everyone wants to protect the most greatest of all beliefs, which is affairs connected with their Lord. No one should have any doubts concerning that. When the philosophical terms or these satanic terms were newly introduced, the ultimate result of it was to cast doubt on Muslims about Allah, and as a result of it, atheism became incorporated in the religion. Either it being partial atheism or total atheism. As the Jahmiyyah fell into total atheism. You'll find that the Asha'ira and the Maturidiyya, they fell into partial atheism. Partially. What do you mean? Meaning that certain attributes of Allah were negated, but some were affirmed, or some were distorted. But ultimately, like we said, generally, we mentioned that it's what all of it, generally, whether it be mustakfir or mustaqil, whether they fell into it abundantly or they fell into it a little, all of it is considered what? Atheism. That's the reason why Shaykh al-Islam authored these books, because he realized the most important and vital of all affairs that the Muslims need to be purified in before they die is to meet Allah, and they have a sound heart, and from those affairs of having a sound heart is having their belief system intact when they meet Allah. Nobody wants to meet Allah and they're upon doubt concerning Allah. That's a very dangerous state to meet Allah in. May Allah protect us and keep all of us protected from that. But the affairs of doubt when meeting Allah is very dangerous, extremely dangerous. Nobody wants to meet Allah and they have sicknesses or affairs of atheism. So you'll find that the great Imam, this is what he's saying here, Ibn al-Majishun, rahimahullah. He says, فَالصَّالَ يَسْتَدِلْ بِزَعْمِهِ من عفوا على جحد ما وصف الرب وسمى من نفسه بأنقاض, that he said that they made these statements in regards. Let me go for the beginning. I'm sorry, everyone. So let me go to the beginning. He says, as for those who negate what Allah described of Himself by going deep, ta'ammuqan, going deep, or taklifan, or takallufan, overburdening themselves. فَقَدْ اسْتَهْوَتُ الشَّيَاطِينَ فِي الْأَرْضِ حَيْرَانٍ. Verily the shayateen had what? Overtaken them, or him or her, in the earth in a state of hayran, of bewilderment and confusion. Because hayra means to be in a state of confusion. Like, I'm just bewildered, just don't know what I'm doing or what's going on. That's the word hayran or hayra. But anyway, Ibn al-Majishun was comparing that the people that fell into this, like those devils who have what? Overwhelmed and misled those who followed them by adopting these beliefs. And what came as a result of it, they became within the earth what? In a state of confusion. Is it clear? So notice the ayah that he's using, which is in Surah Al-An'am, ayah number 71. Surah Al-An'am, ayah 71. 71. Is it 80 or 70? Hey, 70. 71. فالصار يستدل بزعمه على جحد ما وصف الرب وسمى من نفسه بأنقاض لا بد إن كان له كذا من أن يكون له كذا. We already mentioned and explained this. He says, for now you find that they use as an evidence for their claim of denial of what Allah described Himself and what He also gave as names of Himself. That they say, what do they use? That if Allah does this or He has this, then it necessitates this. We just explained this, right? For example, I'll say it again. If Allah is above, it necessitates that He sits. Is it clear? This is an example. If Allah is above, that means He sits. We said, number one, this is impermissible because, number one, the word julus, or sitting, never came in the book of Allah or the Sunnah, the message of Allah. So after the Sunnah, we don't say Allah sits, because it's nowhere in the book of Allah or the Sunnah, number one. Number two, just because Allah Ta'ala mentioned that He's above does not necessitate that He sits, or nor does He have a body. Does not necessitate that. Because if you say that, that means you in your mind resemble Allah with the creation. That's the reason why they fell into their misguidance and into their errors. Why? They fell into what they accused the people of the truth of. They fell into it, that's why they negated it. You ask them, why do you believe Allah is above? Because if Allah is above, it necessitates He sits. What did you do right then by making that statement? You resembled Allah with what? With the creation. That's number one. Or that's number two. And number three, just because something is above does not necessitate it needs it, or it needs to recline on it. Because Allah has created great things from the creation that is above us and with us all the time, nor is it what? Within us, or that it sits or reclines on something. From them is the stars, from them is the sun, from them is the moon. It's above us constantly, does not rely or recline or sit on anything. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could create things that could hover above us and not need to recline on anything, what about Allah? And this is the creation of Allah, that Allah could create certain things for the creation with this type of ability. That it could be above and it does not need to recline on anything or sit on anything in order for it to be above. If this is something Allah could create with this type of ability, what about Allah Himself? Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Jay. So let's go with the great Imam of Shaykh al-Islam, Naqlan an Ibn al-Majishun. But this statement of Ibn al-Majishun, even though it's a little long, however, notice the great Imam that have mentioned the statement of Ibn al-Majishun. Shaykh al-Islam brought it, and he brought it Naqlan, conveying and utilizing our great references. What are those great references that we refer back to? The great Imam, the great Imams of the great Imam Ibn al-Battah al-Akbari, and Abu Bakr ibn al-Afram, the great student of Shaykh al-Islam, Imam Ahl Sunnah Ahmad ibn Hanbal al-Shaybani, and also the great Imam from Cordova, who's Abu Umar al-Talamanki. As we talked about, if you look in the book, he's from Cordova, which is Qurtuba, which is from the great scholars of those when the Muslims had ruled Spain and Portugal. There was an area, as we know, called Cordova. Cordova had a little area or a place in it. It was called Talamanca. In the area of Cordova was another little small area called Talamanca. This great scholar that Shaykh al-Islam had conveyed this statement of Ibn Majishun upon, he was from that area. So Shaykh al-Islam conveyed this statement of Ibn Majishun upon three A'imma. Was Ibn Battah, the great Imam, also Abu Bakr ibn Afram, and Abu Umar al-Talamanki. If you look at your book, this long statement of Ibn Majishun, this long statement, this beneficial statement, was conveyed upon these A'imma. Just flip the pages a couple of back, if you get caught up. It says, وَرَوَى الْأَفْرَمُ Abu Bakr ibn Afram, the great student of Shaykh al-Islam, fi Sunnah. So Abu Bakr ibn Afram had a book called the Sunnah. I don't know if it's matbu', I don't know if it's copied or it's released in book form. I haven't come across it. If somebody knows that it's in book form, let me know. But at any rate, notice what Shaykh al-Islam says. وَأَبُو عَبْدِ اللَّهِ ibn Battah fil Ibana, the great book of the Sunnah, which we hope that one of us will teach this book, Al-Ibana. Al-Ibana al-Kubra is extremely important book for the Ummah. It's not translated, but it is from those great books of i'tiqad, from the usul, to teach the people the foundations of their religion and the positions of the Salaf of how they were in dealing with the people of falsehood of those who ascribe to Islam. Then Shaykh al-Islam said, wa Abu Umar al-Talamanki. So that's who he's also conveying the statement of Ibn al-Majishun upon. So it's Abu Bakr al-Afram fi Sunnah, and Abu Abdullah ibn Battah in al-Ibana, and Abu Umar al-Talamanki also had this book. Also had a book in the Sunnah, and he was from Cordova. He was from Qurtuba. Qurtuba was where everyone today it's in Spain. So the Muslims, everyone, we know that the Muslims used to rule what? Used to rule Spain. Used to rule Portugal also. Ruled the whole area. They ruled all. So anyway, so there was a place So a lot of brothers and sisters, if they say they're from Portugal, their ancestors might be connected with some Arabs, from an Arab background, especially if you know certain people from Portugal. If they invested, they're probably, their lineage might go back to from the Arab, from that time, for those who come from those type of lands. And Allah knows best, He gives to check their lineage. But anyway, this great Imam Abu Umar al-Talamanki, he was also conveyed this great statement upon Ibn al-Majishun. This lengthy statement that we've been discussing for the past 3 lessons. So let's go back to what Ibn al-Majishun says again. So all these great A'imma conveyed this statement. The Shaykh al-Islam brought it in this great book. So it says, he says, فَعَمِيَ عَنِ الْبَيَانِ بِالْخَفِيِّ. He said they became blind by what is clear, by what became khafi, what became hidden. What is he speaking about? He's saying, فَالصِّفَاتَ الثَّابِتَةِ. He said they became blind from what is clear. What is he speaking about? Meaning of what? الصِّفَاتَ الثَّابِتَةِ بِالْكِتَابِ وَالسُّنَّةِ. The names and attributes that have been clearly established in the Book of Allah and the Sunnah. And they resorted to what is khafi. He said they resorted to try to look for something that's been hidden. What does that mean? What's been hidden from us? The names and attributes and the meanings, but what's hidden? What did Allah keep hidden from us? How they are. So that's what he's talking about here. He said, فَعَمِي عَنِ الْبَيَانِ بِالْخَفِيِّ. They didn't stick to what was clear, and they became blinded from it until they resorted to try to look for how it is. Meaning the reality of how those names are, and the true nature of these names and attributes. Why? Why is it considered khafi? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept it what? Hidden from us. Nobody knows that except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. اشتغلوا بماذا؟ بالخفي ليدركه فإذا لم يدرك وقف أحد موقفين. He said they became busy with something that was hidden to try to attain it. And if they weren't able to attain it, then what happened? They took 2 types of positions. What are those positions? Either rejecting the names and attributes of Allah and denying them, and resembling them. So they went to 2 extremes. We know Ahl Sunnah are in the middle of those what? Those 2 affairs where the deviant sects from the Muslims went into either going too far to the right or too far to the what? To the left. So they either fell to denying it or rejecting it or negating it, and they fell into what? Resemblance. They fell into both actually. So both extremes they fell into. For example, what I just gave momentarily, what I just said a moment ago, everyone. For example, Allah is not above, so they denied it, they negated it. Allah is above. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that in His book clearly, in the Quran. How many places, everyone, of the affair of ascension? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above is in many places, but the affair of istiwa, that's in 7 places in the Quran. And as the great Hafiz Hakim, he said in his poetry, he says, هو العلي هو الأعلى هو متعى لي كل معنى معلو الله نعتقد قهر وقدر وذات جل خالقنا ما حل فينا ولا بالخلق متحد وفي سبع آية صرح باستوى على العرش ربي فهو منفرد. And he said in his poetry, رحمه. Anyway, leave that to the side. I don't know what you get. Stick to the point. Anyway, as for al-jahid, so let's just say, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not above. Why you say Allah is not above? So they deny. That's a denial. That's a rejection. Allah is not above. What is that, everyone? That's jahd. That's inkar. That's negation, and that's what? Rejection. And it's denying the affair, rejecting it. But why are you rejected? Because if Allah is above, that means that He sits on a throne, on a chair, like a human being. What's that? Resemblance. Ahsan. So they fell into what? Both. They fell into both. So they either denied, then resembled, and then they fell into denial again. Or if you want to say, for example, you'll find that Shaykh Taymiyyah give it in this order. He said, فَشَبَّهُ أَوَّلًا وَعَطُّلُ ثَانِيًا ثُمَّ شَبَّهُ ثَالِثًا. Shaykh Taymiyyah breaks it down to 3 types. He says they resemble first. They say Allah sits like a human being. So that's the reason why. What's the second step? They denied it. Allah does not above. Khalas. But then he said they fell into a third type of resemblance, where they resembled Allah with things that don't exist at all. So they fell into what? شَبَّهُ ثَالِثًا شَبَّهُ اللَّهَ بِالْمَعْدُمَاتِ. They resembled Allah with the creation, was the first step. The second step was the rejection of it. Then the third step was resembling Allah with things that don't exist. So they start saying that Allah is not above and He's not above the arsh. Where is He? To the point where some of the Jahmiyyah used to say, there is no outward existence of Allah. Rather, the only existence of Allah is in the human mind. That's it. Weirdos. Weird, extremely weird statements. Weirdos after weirdos after more weirdos. Right, everyone? But anyway, but you understand what I'm saying, everyone? So this is what the great Imam Muhammad bin Salih al-Uthaymeen mentions. He said, شَبَّهُ أَوَّلًا عطلوا ثانيا وشبه ثالثا حيث شبه الله بالمعدومات. He said they resembled Allah with the creation was the first step. Then the second step was to reject it. Then the third step was to resemble Allah with affairs of things that don't exist or non-existence. And these affairs, like we said, are all connected with what everyone? Atheism. Is it clear? Either be partial, or whether it be what? Or whether it be complete, or complete atheism. So is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So let's get back to what Ibn Majishun mentions. What does he say? He says, they became blind from what is clear, meaning what Allah mentioned in His book, in the book of Allah, from all those beautiful names and attributes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions. You'll find that the majority of the ayat in the book of Allah, majority of those verses, those beautiful verses, mention some type of name of Allah. إِنَّهُ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ إِنَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ وَإِنَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ شَهِيدٌ. To the end of it. Right, everyone? You find that all throughout the book of Allah. Allah has always mentioned something of His beautiful names and attributes all throughout the Quran. It's known. But the affair that they went away from, so what did they do? They became busy with something that's hidden. And we said the affair that was hidden is what? How these names and attributes are. And we just mentioned that in previous classes. That we know that the affair of looking of how the names and attributes of Allah are from those matters that are destructive, that will bring one destruction. To look to see how the names and attributes of Allah are, and from the greatest of positions to know how that affair was great is what happened with Imam Malik when he was asked the question about what everyone, how Allah ascended. He says, Kayfa stawa, how Allah ascended above the throne. Notice the great man, Imam Malik, what did it say? He says, فَأَطْلَقَ بِرَأْسِهِ حَتَّى أَخَذَتْهُ الرُّحَضَاء. As we talked about, he said he put his head down, and another narration says, إِحْمَرَّ وَجْهُهُ. He said his face became red, and he started sweating profusely to know the great magnitude of the statement that was made and the question that was being asked. So that's to let one know how what this affair is. How? Oh, that's outside. He says, كَأَنَّهُ يَقُولُ. So let's go back to Ibn Majishun. I don't want to drift too far. He says, كَأَنَّهُ يَقُولُ لا نعلم من السمع إلا ما يليق بالمخلوق. We already explained this. Alhamdulillah, we don't need to mention it again. So, Ibn Majishun goes on to say, وَجَحَدَ مَا سَمَرُ الرَّبِّ مِن نَفْسِهِ. So, they denied and rejected what Allah also gave names of Himself. He gave names of Himself, such as hearing or sight. In regards to the Mu'tazila, we know that they just affirmed the name without any characteristic, which just doesn't make any sense. Meaning that Allah, He hears without any hearing, or sees without any sight. It doesn't make any sense. That's in regards to the Mu'tazila. or the affairs pertaining to dissension, or Allah coming on the day of resurrection, or Allah ascending, or the anger of Allah, or the rejoice of Allah, or the love of Allah, who those who deny that in regards to the deviant sect from the Muslims called the Asha'ira. So these sects had, what we mentioned and said, all had their portion of rejection or twisting or denial of certain names and attributes, whether it be rejecting them altogether or rejecting some of them or twisting their meanings, as we just said. But let's go on with Ibn Majishun mentions. It says, بِصَمْتَ الرَّبِّ عَمَّا لَمْ يُسَمِّ مَنْهَا فَلَمْ يَزَلْ يُمْلِي لَهُ الشَّيْطَانِ حَتَّى جَعَدَ قَوْلَ الرَّبِّ. Subhanallah. He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so let's read the full statement of what Ibn Majishun mentioned, rahimahullah. He said, فَعَمِيَ عَنِ الْبَيِّنِ بِالْخَفِيِّ وَجَحَدَ مَا سَمَى الرَّبِّ مِنْ نَفْسِهِ بِصَمْتِ الرَّبِّ عَمَّا لَمْ يُسَمِّ مِنْهَا فَلَمْ يَزَلْ يُمْلِي لَهُ الشَّيْطَانِ حَتَّى جَحَدَ قَوْلَ الرَّبِّ وُجُوهُ يَوْمَئِذٍ نَاظِرَةٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهَا نَاظِرَةٌ. Allahu Akbar. He said, they rejected what Allah, of course, what He ascribed and named Himself with those names. He says, now listen to this, Allah remaining silent of what He did not name Himself with. And the shaitan continues to what? Continues to dictate to them certain ideas and beliefs until they rejected the statement of Allah Ta'ala. On that day, faces will be bright, and to their Lord they will be looking at. Meaning to their Lord they will be looking at Him. What is He talking about here? And we'll stop here, inshallah. Ibn Majishun. Listen to what he says. By Allah remaining silent of what He did not say or give a name from those affairs. What is He speaking about? Easy. How many times have I repeated this? What did Allah remain silent from, everyone? How? That's it. It's that simple. Allah mentioned to us His names, His attributes, the meanings linguistically. However, what did He keep silent from? And nor did He burden us with what? How? That's all. That's it. The reality of those names and attributes. That's it. So that's what Ibn Majishun is speaking about here. That's what he's speaking about. وَصَفَ نَفْسَهُ بِالصِّفَاتِ وَسَكَتَ عَنِ الْكَيْفِيَّةِ وَالْكُلِّ. What Allah described with those characteristics, and when He remains silent of how and the true reality of how they are. Is it clear, everyone? Similar to that, our great messenger, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, likewise, what he described Allah with of characteristics, and the message of Allah also remained quiet from what? How they are. So that's what Ibn Majishun is speaking about when he says, هَذَا مَا صَمَتَ عَنْهُ الرَّبِّ. That's the affair which our Lord remained what? Remained silent about. Now, so listen what he goes on to say. He says, Shaitan consistently or continues to dictate and instill in the minds of mankind, from men and women, from the men and women, and from the jinn, who also, like we said, have these type of ideologies. Because we know on the day of resurrection, not only will human beings will be held accountable, who also will be accountable on the day of resurrection? The jinn. The jinn will also be held accountable. The unseen jinn. Anyway, فَلَمْ يَزَدْ يُمْلِي لَهُ الشَّيْطَانِ. For verily, the shaitan continued to dictate and instill in their minds these type of ideas until they rejected the greatest of all blessings. The greatest of all blessings in paradise. Where they rejected the statement of Allah Ta'ala on that day, where faces will be what? Blooming or blossoming with that what? With that madar, with that blessed light of affairs of blessing, and in regards to what? Until their Lord they will be what? Looking at. So notice that the great Imam Ibn Majishun, what is he mentioning here? He's saying that these type of ideas that's adopted all are dictation, or what they're considered ideas that the devil are casting in the minds of the people, or in the hearts, I should say, of the belief of the Muslims, instilling in them these type of what? Ideas. From the greatest of all athar that proves this is the athar of Yahya az-Zimmi, as I mentioned in last class. And the great Imam, Hamid al-Liwal Jahl al-Ta'di Bihaq, Imam Rabi' ibn Hadi Madkhali, you'll find in this book when he was explaining Al-Sharia by Abu Bakr al-Jurri, that, oh, he's called you there? Okay. Allah Akbar, Allah. Shalom, la ilaha. Shalom, la ilaha. Excuse me, I think I caught you there. Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمد الوصيلة والفضيلة وبعث مقام محمود الذي وعده. Fine. So you'll find that these ideas or these perverted beliefs, the shaitan was the one causing, was stirring up the people, accepting and adopting these type of what? Corrupted beliefs. And to the point, as you'll find that Ibn Majishun, he says, فَلَمْ يَزَلْ يُمْلِي لَهُ الشَّيْطَانُ حَتَّى جَحَدَ قَوْلَ الرَّبِّ. He said they continued, or the shaitan continued to dictate and instill in them these perverted beliefs until they denied the statement of Allah Ta'ala, which is what? On that day, when faces will be blossoming, and to their Lord they will be looking at. As we know, the greatest of all ni'am, the greatest of all blessings in paradise is looking at Allah. There's no greater blessing than looking at Allah when the inhabitants of paradise enter it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ja'alana Allah wa iyyakum min ashabiha. May Allah make us and you from its inhabitants. But you'll find that the greatest of all blessings, the people of deviation, when the unseen devils had dictated to their minds these type of ideas until they rejected the greatest of all blessings. Because there's no blessing, like we said, brothers and sisters, when if the people or the inhabitants of paradise, once they enter it and they have taken their places, that they will receive of all the great physical pleasures. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them the greatest of all pleasure, which is the what? The greatest pleasure in regards to the heart. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will gather between both great pleasures, which is the physical pleasure, and the pleasure of the heart. The pleasure of the heart will take place when the people look at Allah. And they will forget everything they're in of bliss, of everything that is in paradise, of the greatest of all types of physical pleasures. They'll forget about it when they look at Allah. And that will be the greatest of all what? Pleasures. This great pleasure, the people of deviation denied it. That's why you'll find that Ibn al-Qayyim put in his book called Hadid Arwah ila Bilad al-Afrah, when he was refuting the Mu'tazila. He said those who deny the greatest of all pleasures is in fear that they will be prevented from attaining it, since they denied it. Who are those people? Starting with them, they are called the Mu'tazila. The Mu'tazila, like we said, they deny that Allah can be seen at all. That Allah will not be seen. We know that from our Aqidah, on the day of resurrection, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will be seen twice by the believers. On the day of resurrection and in paradise. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will appear for the believers when the people on the day of resurrection are tested. They'll be tested by their belief first. They'll be tested by their belief in the rububiyyah of Allah, They'll be tested by their ibadah of Allah, tawheed al-uluhiyyah, and the affairs of asma wa sifat, the names and attributes of Allah will also be, the people will be tested by on the day of resurrection. طيب, those tests which will take place on the day of resurrection, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test the believers by appearing to them. And they will have to know Him by a sign. That sign will be in connection with the names and attributes of Allah, which is called the saq, which is called the shin. For those who deny that Allah has the names and attributes, they more than likely will be confused because they denied it in the first place. Allah doesn't have that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book that He has what they call the saq. يَوْمَ يُكْشَفُ عَنْ سَاقٍ وَيُدْعَوْنَ إِلَى السُّجُودِ فَلَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says on the day when the shin will be revealed. That's in the Quran. But anyway, those affairs pertaining to that, the Mu'tazila rejected it. And we said that Allah will be seen on the day of resurrection for the believers, of course. That's the ittifaq. That's by agreement. That's by agreement that the believers will definitely see Allah on the day of resurrection. And they will see Allah when they enter paradise. So it's twice. As far as the hypocrites and the kuffar, that's something different. In regards to whether or not they will see Allah or not. As far as the kuffar, of course we know that they will be deprived of seeing Allah. The hypocrites, that's something different. We'll talk about that later. But what's in agreement is that the believers will see Allah, bil-ittifaq. طيب. The Mu'tazila reject this affair. They say no, Allah will not be seen. Why? Because they say لأن الرؤيا للمخلوق المحدود في زعمه. He said because the vision for the creation is bounded, as they claim, or their so-called claim. And those affairs are not affirmed or established for Allah. So they rejected something that Allah has said in His book. That as a result, when the people look at Allah, what will happen? They said that Allah will allow their faces to be blossoming. وُجُوهُ يَوْمَئِذٍ نَاضِرَةٌ. They'll be blossoming. وَالْبَهَاء وَالنَّضَارَةُ والحسن من النظر إلى وجه الرب أعظم نعمة أعدها الله في دار كرامته. We just mentioned this already. He said, as a result of them looking at Allah, they will be what? Their faces will be blossoming, blooming, and that beauty, that of radiance, of beauty from them looking to Allah, which is the greatest blessing that Allah has prepared for everyone, awliya, from those who are close to Him, subhanahu, and the people of Iman. We'll stop here, inshallah. We'll talk about the reasons of why the Mu'tazila rejected this matter. We'll continue this tomorrow, bi'idhnillah jalla wa azza. Any questions about the lesson, anyone? We'll stop here. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.